Well, I thank you for so much for helping with my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First of all, that's a terrific project. So thank you for having me. My name is Yoav Lanzmann. I started my space career about 20 years ago after I graduated from aerospace engineering studies. I worked for about a decade with the communication satellites and systems engineering and operations. And after that, uh, my plan was to start a PhD in planetary sciences because I had my master's on that before, but um, different occasions cause for different decisions, and I found myself in Space IL. It was about 7 years ago as a senior systems engineer, and later on the deputy mission director of the Bereshit mission that reached the moon last year, in April last year. And since then, I graduated from the International Space University, and now I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm the CEO of Moonscape. That's my almost established company that's going to provide images of of the lunar surface from lunar orbit.
That's awesome. In terms of Moonscape, will you have your own satellites to take the images, or will you be using the
Yes.
images? Oh, you will. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess I mean, what's the process by which you actually get a satellite into lunar, from concept to development to launch to actually in lunar orbit and operational? What's
I think that I think that the main issue is to get there, to get into lunar orbit, because so far, unless you're a space agency of a country that decide to go to the moon, like the United States, like China. And if this is the case, then you can have your own launch and get to the moon with your spacecraft. But beside that, if I'm just from a different country or a private project, then the only way of doing that is to launch my spacecraft into a, let's call it, regular orbit, like a low Earth orbit or a GTO orbit, that's like communication satellites. And from that orbit, you can propel yourself to the moon. That means that most of your mass, of your spacecraft mass, is propellant. and this is a bit, no, it's not a bit. This is the wrong way of doing that, because you want to focus on what you want to achieve by that, like getting your payloads to the surface of the moon, for example. And if most of your mass is just the fuel, then it's a very expensive mission and so on. But I think this is changing, because there's a trend of commercial companies, private companies that follow the government missions to the moon right now. And once it will begin, it will allow other types of payloads, other types of spacecraft to rideshare with them. So you will have someone who's already aiming to get to the moon that you can just hitchhike with.
are maybe even better than hitchhiking. Get on a bus that's already going to the moon and then get out
Yeah,
whenever you get there.
yeah, that's the idea. You pay for that, of course, but and that's fair. But it will become a service. There are several companies that are working on that as a transportation service to the moon or to other places. So this is the future, but it's the near future.
Um, I guess in terms of, I mean, it feels like the surface of the moon's a lot closer than it's ever been since I was born, which was after Apollo. Um, and I was wondering how much of that you think what could be credited to like the Google Lunar X Prize. Um,
Um, I think that this might be a main driver here for commercial companies or just to small organization to start believing that they can do that, because of course NASA and also the Chinese Space Agency already know that they can do that. They did it before. It's nothing new here, but the fact that first of all, NASA already started the CLEPS program, the commercial lunar. I don't remember exactly but they pay for commercial companies to take some of the design and development and manufacturing efforts on themselves and get the payloads of NASA to the moon. And because they're commercial, they will not do that just for NASA. They will also find other types of business revenue streams and find other customers. So this is the beginning of the lunar, or as they call it, the cislunar ecosystem. And it's starting, but at this point it's working only on governmental funding. But I believe it will change as it changed for the Earth orbit satellites. You have more commercial activity in Earth orbit than governmental at this moment. So it's something that can happen, and the moment the landing part of lunar missions will become easier, and because currently it's the most risky part of the mission. I mean, I should know, right? But once this happen, let me try to, yeah, sorry for that. Too much glare from outside. I hope this is better. So a lot of landing attempts will occur in the coming years. Some will probably fail, but the ones that will succeed will show the way of how to do that, how to perfect that, how to do that more safely and more reliably, and then it will become more available. The surface of the moon will become more accessible, and I think it can be compared to aviation, because at the beginning of commercial aviation, you could only, it started with post, I think, post delivery, and you could deliver only small cargoes from place to place, only for short distances, and after that for longer distances it was risky. Only just a very few companies could do that, had the experience and the understanding of how to do that more reliably, and it took time before it came before it became what we are used to now. Because as I remember, as a child, we almost never had vacations abroad. We never flew anywhere because it was so expensive. So only businessmen or government officials went to to other continents, right? It wasn't that available, but now it's almost cheap. Okay, um, it's not very expensive, and it will happen again for the moon. It will start as something very risky and very expensive, and it will change in time as it becomes more available. And I believe it will happen quickly. So we can see the results of that even maybe even by the end of this decade.
It's funny you say that. I like to say that the 2020s are going to be as transformational to space exploration development as the 1990s were to the internet and computers and communication. So it sounds like you have a similar belief.
Yeah, and I think this is something that a lot of people have a hard time to imagine, because if you ask people to imagine, let's take for a fact that NASA is going to the moon right now, and they will get there, and they will start some kind of activity, and some other companies will tag along in a commercial business for mostly for NASA. And I think that we usually imagine this as something that is just a bit more than what we used to see in current days. Like the Chinese are landing once per several years on the moon right now, and the NASA missions will start. So they'll have one or two missions per year, and so the number of entities that have activities on the surface at a certain moment will be just a few, right? But I think this is false. I don't think it will be so few, because when you start working on the surface of the moon, it's such a huge effort to do that in the first place, and you want to start keeping some infrastructure there and do some continuous work. And it's not like the Apollo, that they went there, and for Apollo 17 that stayed on the moon for the longest time. I think it was just almost 3 days. It will not be the case. You will stay there for longer times. You can take as an example the Chinese landers and the rovers that they put there. They worked for years. So if you have just a few missions per year, and they continue their activity on the surface for several years, it will accumulate. So by the end of the decade, you will have dozens of missions on the ground, maybe even 100. There's currently, I think, about 90 missions planned for this decade, for the coming decade, for the moon. Most of them on the surface, so it will be massive, and this is almost like in science fiction films and books, right? It's not already a lunar city or something like that, but there's a lot of activity, and it also means that we'll need to solve a lot of problems that we currently don't have on the moon, like the fact that you can't have territory on the moon, or you can't own anything, or how you deal with others on the moon, because it's no one's nation, it's no one's country. The laws doesn't apply don't apply there as it is on the Earth. So it's difficult, and it will not be easy, and we hope that there will not be serious conflicts there, but it's something that we need to to try to solve before we get to that point.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I guess I mean, do you see a mechanism for actually solving it?
Um, no, but there are a lot of discussions about that, and I'm aware of some options that are proposed for that, but it's currently still in the academic level and not in the practical level. So I don't know what it takes. I'm not a policymaker or a lawyer. I don't know how to, what is the process to bring it from this level um, to the level where you can, I don't know, maybe enforce that. I honestly don't know. But so far it's at least very interesting, and I think it's very important to at least talk about that.
Yeah, I I basically see several different areas of conflict in terms of the moon. Oh, I mean, you have what you were talking about the people that are actually doing activities on the moon conflicting with each other, both wanting to access the same spot or to prevent another person from accessing a particular spot. So, I mean, it seems like there you have the parties like actively engaged, willing to come to some type of framework or something to solve the problem. But you also have like conflict with other groups that aren't even on the moon. The people who are active in space and might want to access the moon at some point in the future. And then you have people who don't even have a space program who don't want, to have the moon fully occupied before they get there. And then you have people who just don't want the moon to be messed with at all for a variety of reasons. Some state it clearly, and others maybe uh, they're not even sure how to articulate or don't want to articulate.
Yeah. So it, I think it's a real problem. We need to take that into consideration. Uh, it's also true for other aspects of space, not just the moon, right? Because some countries, and by that I mean a lot of people, don't have access to space. They can't send anything to space, and they can't benefit from space. And this is something that's in the it's the ideal of equality, and try to share what we have with others. And by what we have, I mean the opportunities we have in space, and what we can benefit from. It's like um, um, the potential of the global networks of communication that are in establishment right now, that potentially they can serve the entire globe. I don't know if this is their business case. I'm not sure about that, but potentially they can do that without significant efforts compared to other areas on the Earth. So this is a good question. I don't know if I have the answers for it, but I believe that at least all the countries in the world should have the opportunity to take part in that. In a way, you actually don't need to be the one that build the spacecraft in order to send something to space. There's a lot of programs for students or high school students to send tests and to perform some activities in space via the International Space Station and other programs, and CubeSats that enabled a lot of small scale activities in space. So the moon is an entirely new level of difficulty at this moment. At this moment, it will change, but it's still very expensive to get there. So it's still almost out of reach for most of the people on Earth. And I think this is also something we should change. We don't want just a couple of countries to have the ability to reach the moon and manipulate whatever resources that you have there, especially because the moon is probably the gateway to the entire solar system. It's easy to launch from the moon, and once you master the manufacturing capabilities in space or on the lunar surface, it will be easy to reach any other place in the solar system. It's hard for us from here because the Earth gravity is so large. So it's so powerful. But compared to the moon, it's actually when you send something to any other place in the solar system, most of your effort is to leave Earth. This is it. Once you're out, you can go anywhere, and it's the differences between places are insignificant compared to the lift-off effort.
Yeah, I heard a quote one time. It said, "Once you're in low Earth orbit, you're halfway anywhere in the solar system." Kind
Yep.
of what you're saying. Um, well, how most of the people I've talked to, who aren't in the space community have no idea that we're going back to the moon. And I was wondering how it is there in Israel, with Team IL or Space IL.
Okay.
Um, how how well known do you think that is among the general population in Israel?
Um, the thing is that Space AL, one of the main objectives of Space AL, and I think you can call it the main objective, was education. And everything else was a leverage for that. And we did a lot of activities and initiated a lot of programs to tell the public, and especially students and kids, about what we're doing and about the challenges and how to solve them. And we asked for advices. We asked them um, to send us suggestions of how to deal with several challenges. And we added some materials for the final exams, for example, in physics. And we did a lot in that. And SpaceL are still working on that to continue that. But so I think that around the time of launch and the time we reached the moon and the landing attempt, there was so much coverage by the media and in social media and everywhere. So people knew about that. People were involved in that. But it is when things are when things quiet down, then people forget that and go back to their day-to-day activities and talks, and the news return to cover politics and economics and all the regular stuff. And I think that a lot of people uh, are. I think it's easy to forget, but I think that we made a lot of impact on many kids um, to get them involved in space and to understand that we have a space program in Israel and it will continue and we'll have more things coming up and um, so I think that even if we reach just one child per class that we gave a talk to to change his mind and to choose to study sciences and technology and engineering, that would be great, and we will see the outcome of this in the coming years. Um, and if this is what will happen, that would be great, because education is the base of everything. In any country, in any culture, you need um, to inspire the children in order to get that result.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of amazing to think about like SpaceX. uh, if you can just inspire one person that then takes that vision that far, that could, or even like in New Zealand with Peter Beck and the
Yep,
Rocket Labs. It's amazing how a really committed um, individual can make a huge impact, like what you did with Space IL as well. I mean, but how do you kind of uh, have a sustainable reason, um, in the sense that, we've been emphasizing in 2024, we're going to land the first woman and the next man on the surface of the moon. That's all that people have capacity to hear. And once you've landed the first woman on the moon, then you're done. So we're good. As opposed to we're going to the moon to explore and develop resources that will help humanity. Uh, is really the message we want to get out there. And oh, by the way, we're going to do it um, using astronauts that represent all of us. Is kind of more the message that we want to get out there. Um,
absolutely.
but how do you do that? I mean, it seems like we have a big PR marketing problem.
um, yeah, and I think that um, once I thought that in the Apollo era, we all know that most of the world were watching the landing on TV, and it was because of the grandeur of the moment. But I heard just uh, a week or two ago, I think it was in the Planetary Radio of the Planetary Society, that they talked about the public relation machine that NASA um, uh, that was part of NASA at that point of time, um, in order to make sure that it will happen. It wasn't a natural thing. And they sent people and astronauts and high-ranking officials everywhere in the world, especially to countries that are in good relationships or some kind of partnership with NASA, with the program. But they went to every corner of the world eventually. So it wasn't free. It wasn't by coincidence, and it wasn't natural. It was it was a result of a lot of effort, and probably a lot of probably a very expensive effort also. But it was worth it because they made this moment something that everyone that was alive back then remembers. Even people that were just very young kids remember this moment, and um, this is something that is missing now. You don't have it anymore. And sometimes you have it for a very short period of time, and then only the space geeks remember. um, so the question is whether it's worth it or not, right? But I think that if it's a national mission, then it's based on everyone's taxes of the same country, of course. Then you should have a way of explaining that better. You need people to know about that and to understand how important it is and what you get back from it, right? Because this is something that I get this question every time I give a talk. Why should we spend so much money on space, right? It's a common one. So first of all, it's not a lot of money, but this is a different subject. But the thing is that we get a lot back, and this is something that people don't understand. When you try to do something almost impossible, something that is breaking the envelope of what you can, that you prove that you can do, to try something harder and something much more harder to achieve. It's you get back things that you sometimes don't expect even. And we have a very long list. NASA have a very long list of spin-offs and stuff that were an indirect consequence of space exploration programs, and this is huge. A lot of things in medical sciences and in understanding physical and chemical processes, and a lot of inventions in a lot of in many fields that are not space related, directly. And these things change our life in time for something better. We get better things. It's not just, and I'm sorry if this sounds like I don't respect that, but it's not like another application for our iPhone, right? It's sometimes things that helps us understand things that we didn't know before, or find in better ways or more effective ways, or more reliable or safe ways to do things that we are doing right now. And I really think that we should make this a priority, not just in space, by the way, in other fields as well, to try to do things that are hard, that are not easy, and even if it's not it's not something that are immediately beneficial in a very visible way, and this is something that governments can do, right? Commercial business can't do something like that, unless they have very large pockets already.
Yeah, it seems to me that in many spheres of activities that humans are involved in, we kind of have the reasoning backwards. Uh, you know, if you want to do something, the first question that people ask is, how will you make money at it? But I think
Yeah.
the first question that we should ask is it worthwhile to do? And then let's figure out how we get the money to do it, as opposed to letting the economics drive our activities.
Yeah. I think space is one of the easiest way to inspire people. And I I really think when I heard when I read a lot of um, um, testimonials of people that saw the on TV the Apollo 11 landing. They watched it on TV and they felt very optimistic, because if you can achieve that, you can achieve anything you want, right? There's no limits. Um, and these are thoughts of adults, right? Young children just want to become an astronaut, or want to become a rocket scientist, or a spacecraft engineer, or something like that. And this is great. I mean, this is how you build the future. You need to believe that you can do impossible things, like um, um, to, for example, we can talk about it now during the pandemic, that we can solve a global pandemic um, in much less time than we thought we can, just at the beginning of this year. And this is incredible. Um, and we can solve a lot of other problems in many other fields that are important here on Earth. It's not in space. We're not investing in space, right? They don't accept our money yet in space. So everything you invest in space projects is something that you invest here on Earth, and it 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 goes to places on Earth, and it it means, but in the end, that you have more kids that want to be the brilliant engineer that invents the new I don't know, the new vaccine, or the girl that wants to be the next physicist that get a Nobel Prize, or this is how we build the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it starts with inspiration, not with uh, anything else. I have a question. If it was safe and affordable, would you go to space?
Sure.
Like
In
to
a minute,
orbit,
yeah.
to the moon, or would you like immigrate to Mars? Like how far would you go?
I definitely want to visit space, and visit the moon, and visit Mars and other places. Um, Immigrate there? Not yet. I'm not sure that I'm this kind of pioneer.
Do you know anybody that is?
Um, well, it seems like Elon Musk is one of them,
That's true.
right?
Well, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Huh. Um, I don't know. I don't have any idea at this moment.
In
Yes,
terms, oh,
I want to
go
say
ahead.
just one thing. Sorry. I think that one major part of space inspiration comes from science fiction. I know that I got myself into this because of science fiction that I read in my childhood and I'm still reading today. Um, this is, I think, very important because science fiction is at first it's stories and everybody likes stories, but it's also make you think the what if question. What if we meet aliens? What if we are going to Mars to build our next civilization there, and what will happen between Mars and Earth afterwards? What will we find on other stars, and etc. etc. It's limitless, and I think this is a very easy door for inspiration in sciences and technology and other aspects, also social um, sciences. It's an easy way to explore what can happen and what we want to happen, what we don't want to happen in the future, and then you can shape your thoughts about that, around that, and decide what you can do in order um, to shape the future as you believe it will, it should it should become reality.
Yeah, are there some specific authors or stories that particularly inspired you?
Um, a lot actually. I like the Asimov stories to begin with. The the short stories about the robots and how they develop and how they help humanity, and the Foundation series and Dune, of course, that's a major masterpiece. And and these days I just finished the Dark Forest. It's the second book after the three body problem, um, which is very original and very, very inspiring to my taste. It's hard science fiction, but those who like spacecraft and space travel and yes, also aliens, I believe will find it very interesting.
Isn't it funny how in like the 1960s, people thought robots would be more commonplace than computers? Like computers were these big things that nobody would have, that you only have like one or two of them, but robots would be just walking around all over the place.
It's so hard to imagine uh, back then that computers will become so tiny, right? So you could have almost everything you need in a piece of plastic in your pocket. Um, so I can understand that the internet is also something that I don't think there's a lot of science fiction books about that have something that resembles the internet. Um, and and even if they do, um, the internet changed everything, right? How we communicate, how we it it changes the culture, the worldwide culture, um, and it's not just positive, right? There's a lot of negative things also, as always with any type of technology. But these are things that nobody nobody thought of um, before they happen. So it's I think we're very privileged to live during this um, revolution, this communication revolution, and this new space era. And I think this is something that will be very well, maybe the future will be more exciting, but I'm very excited about that. That's I experienced that.
It's going to be an amazing decade, and you know, it's only because of people like you making it happen. So I really thank you for your efforts.
I'm just one person, and you need a lot of people and a lot of time in order to make it happen. But this is why we need to do those things right now. And I don't think you need to be a spacecraft engineer in order to bring us to the stars. I think that everything we do, from uh, teaching kids, or selling books, or walking in the library, or doing things like what you do, to bring it to the public, and to engage the public with tough questions of what the future will be. So I think anyone can contribute to that. Um, yeah. So I want to refer to a song by Ada Palmer, um, who's an American historian and a composer and many other things, and an author. And she has a song called "Somebody Will." It's exactly about that. The fact that the journey is so long. I'm too excited to quote precisely, but um, the journey is so long and so difficult and challenging. But we need to to contribute. Every one of us can contribute in just a tiny bit to accomplish this. And in the end, in many generations, we will see the outcome of this. So so yeah, everyone can contribute.
You know, there's also another aspect. I heard this quote that we're always one generation away from uh, barbarism and ignorance, because every generation is born completely unknowing anything that came before it. Uh, and you know, it's kind of interesting how our knowledge has become so fragmented, and we live in these information bubbles, and you have like lots of people who have very narrow experiences. Uh, I, I was wondering if that causes you any concern.
Of course. um, yeah. We I'm going back to the pandemic right now, and we see a lot of people that don't believe the level of the crisis, and the that and they're not going to get vaccinated, and things like that. And it's not, this is just the popular talk right now, but there's a lot of a lot of people that are that don't understand science and don't believe in the benefits of science, and the that this is that science is the only way we have, the only method we have of revealing the real truth of things. And I think there's a famous quote of Carl Sagan that I will probably misquote. um, that we reached a very high level of understanding the nature of things, but we are no, I'm misquoting that. But the thing is that we are not good at at the outreach part of it. We are not explaining that. We are not teaching that well, and we are we have the power over many very destructive abilities at this moment. A few decades ago, it was the fear of the nuclear war, and now we have other types, including that, other types of hazards. But I think that ignorance is the most frightening one, because you you can't just convince people, and it's wrong to try to force people to listen to scientists, for example, just because they have a PhD in this field or another. They need to understand the method of science, the public, I mean, in order to understand what it means when a scientist claim a certain argument. And this is important because sometimes people, even scientists, get things wrong. And that's acceptable, even in science, especially in science, right? Because this is how you do science. You try to find the faults of other people's arguments, and by that you find the best argument, to the best claim, the best explanation of certain phenomena. And until you find something that most scientists in the same field agrees upon, and sometimes after a lot of years, after new evidence, you find it false, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that the person that claimed it in the beginning was not smart or something like that. This is how science works. And if some claim is found false, it doesn't mean that the entire scientific field is incorrect, right? So that's how we collect information and process it and analyze it and get to the right, or what we think is the right now, results and conclusions. And the fact is that with those conclusions, we can provide the technology that is based on that. So it doesn't mean if there's a tiny detail that we can find a different explanation later on of how exactly does it work. The fact is that it's working, and the technology is working accordingly, and we can proceed in our in making our technology better and making our lives, hopefully, better for the next generations. So the scientific method is something that we are failing for generations to explain to the public. And this is very difficult to see and to understand. But the first thing is to understand that this is what's happening. That most of the public doesn't understand that, and it has consequences, very bad consequences.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're right. The outreach about the method is key, because to the layperson, the language of the scientist and the language of the priest sound almost as completely, so much is placed on trust. Answers aren't things that we figure out. They're things that are in the back of the book, or things that come up on Google, and then whatever answer you see the most must be the right one, as
Yep.
opposed to understanding the process by which you can find out if something is true or not. Um, and it seems to me that as we become more technologically enabled and so much specialized, and the specialists using language of their specialty uh, without being understood broadly, that people become more and more in a position of helplessness in terms of being able to penetrate to the real meat of the matter, as it were. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, Robert Heinlein wrote a book about this generation ship. One of those huge ships where you have people live multiple lives, on the ship, and there's some revolt at some point, and uh, essentially, these priest-like people were called scientists, and they were just going through the motions of without understanding of the generations before them. Uh, and I feel like we really risk that in our society, that people kind of, go through the motions without understanding. And I don't think it's a new thing. It's just, when we had the potential to actually to learn the truth of it and kind of ignore that potential.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's nobody's fault, nobody's direct fault, at least. You can't blame the public of not understanding that, because the people that can explain that um, doesn't do a good enough job in that. I mean, me um, as a person, I can reach so many people up to some limit, but so I'm limited in that. So unless it's something that a government or someone very powerful um, uh, put it as a priority, as something that you need to invest in order to make sure that you are not, that the society doesn't deteriorate because we are dependent on our technology and sciences. I mean, this is probably the only way of maintaining that, to have the people in power to make sure that that um, it doesn't happen. Um, and I think that social media has a large part of amplifying um, uh, small groups, small and loud groups of people, um, in a good and a bad way. I mean, it can be used to good purposes, but it's also helps harmful groups um, to spread their claims, and you know, so it's also something kind of new that we need to deal with.
It is, yeah. I mean, whenever you can, I heard somebody say it's not the best argument that wins, it's the best defended argument that wins. And so, in our social media thing, maybe the one that's the most amplified, uh, it's kind of worrisome.
Yeah.
Well, um, I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing what becomes of Moonscape. Uh, is there a
Thank
way
you.
for people to get involved?
Unfortunately, not yet. It's still in just the early days of establishment. So I believe that in a few months, I can say more on what we're doing, and ask people to join in. So it's not a long wait.
I'll definitely keep an eye out for it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and I hopefully we can stay in touch.
Sure.
And um, I look forward to seeing the great things that you'll do, um, and we'll talk again soon.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me and for the nice talk.
You have a good rest of your day then.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.